Hello, my name is Georganne Ford, and I'm here with Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. And we have a special guest who's an attorney mediator from the firm, and her name is Debbie Schneider. Debbie's been with the firm, probably she's definitely one of the top experts at that firm. She's been there for, is it 10 or 11 years, Debbie?
Well, I think it's closer to 15.
15. Wow.
15.
Now
Okay.
you know you've got an expert today. And Debbie's going to talk about COVID and child custody and how that's really made things sometimes more difficult and more challenging this year. So, Debbie, any insights that you can give us, we're definitely going to learn from this.
Great. Well, thank you, Georganne. So at the Alpha Center, we start our couples off if they have minor children with a mediation with one of our family child therapists. And that family child therapist sits down with the couple and puts together a parenting plan. We call it a parenting plan. It's really a custody plan, right? So for many of those couples, they're still living together and they have to really be creative in thinking about what they want custody to look like when they're no longer living together. But in most of our couples do a really, really fantastic job in that 2-hour mediation session. And they come away with that with, I think, a really good beginning in our mediation program. For many couples, it sets the tone for a positive experience and a worthwhile experience. And I think most of those couples, as I said, do really well. So they spend a couple of hours putting together a parenting plan, and then they revise that as it needs to be revised. But what happened for many couples with COVID is that, as we know, everybody's lives were upended when the pandemic started. And so for couples with minor children who were planning to separate or who had already separated, they put together a parenting plan that they expected to have work for them. And as I said, it upended everybody's plans. And so many of those children were suddenly not in school every day. So for those couples, they were looking at virtual school. And that was a huge adjustment for many, many couples. How to make that work, how to be sure that the children were in place where they needed to be for virtual school, and then obviously how to adjust the parenting plan so everybody could have their custodial time with the children and everybody could be in school when they needed to be. So I think the hallmark of all of this is flexibility. Those couples really had to learn to be flexible, more flexible maybe than they really wanted to be. But that was really an additional component and probably an additional stress for those.
Sounds like it definitely would be stressful because it's affecting my job.
Right, exactly.
And how do I balance this?
Right, and that's the other piece of it. You know, for those couples who have had maintained their jobs, hopefully they were able to work from home. For those couples that have had essential jobs and essentially couldn't work from home, if they maintained their job, then how did they adjust the schedule so that the jobs could continue and the children could be attending virtual school? So it was just a confining and I think exhausting piece for many of them. I think our did really well. I think by and large, the people I heard from adjusted very, very well, and that's just to their credit that they've been able to make that adjustment. For those couples that lost their jobs, and there were some of those, so then we have the addition of not only virtual school, but also probably financial stresses. So again, that was just flexibility, the need to look for additional jobs, the need to adjust. And of course, for some couples, that affected child support. But again, the custody piece is what we focus on for those couples at the Alpha Center. And we really try to make sure that they're able to cope with this.
So, Debbie, did you get phone calls from people that maybe previously had gone through the Alpha Center program for divorce mediation and then needed some more guidance?
I'm sure we did receive some of those telephone calls and some contacts from people that needed further guidance on like how do we cope with this. And I think the biggest problem for most couples is if they had very different attitudes about what COVID meant for their family.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I did have some couples that I had were my clients in the past with the Alpha Center, and suddenly they were emailing me or calling me and saying, okay, we don't have the same attitude about this. We really need some guidance about how to compromise on this. One of us feels like they need to adhere very strongly to all of the restrictions, and the other parent might have had a much more liberal attitude about the restrictions. And so that caused some conflict. And for some of those couples, they needed court intervention, frankly, to help them. But most of our couples do really well. And I think that again is they've learned, I hope, that the flexibility piece is so important going forward, the cooperation and the flexibility. There were some couples. I also had a particular couple of mine that had some difficulty with if the parents were exposed, and this was in the height of the pandemic. So if the parents were exposed to potential risks, then they needed to be tested before they could be in contact with the child again or children. So that again, that created some stress, and that, like how long do we need to wait, and what should we follow the CDC guidelines, and how closely do we need to follow those, and are we comfortable, and have we been wearing masks, and are all the protocols being adhered to?
Right away I'm thinking essential workers. If one of
right.
Yeah.
And that was true for one member of this couple. He had a job where he had to be in contact with the public on a daily basis. And so how many protocols was he following, and was he able to ensure that when he was back in touch with the child, the risk was not there for the child, right? And so that affected some custodial time, and that was difficult for some couples. So I think, again, the hallmark of all of this is people's ability to just maintain flexibility, maintain cooperation throughout. And hopefully, now that there's some vaccines on board, those issues will begin to be better able to be addressed without so much stress.
I so hear you, and I'm sure the rest of the audience does. Flexibility is just coming out that would be so important for the children, because it's what's best for the children is what we hope.
Right.
So
exactly. Well, that's the legal standard.
Right.
Custody is always to be governed in Pennsylvania by what is in the best interest of the child or children. So that's the guiding principle. And but that has been a challenge for some people.
Right. I could definitely see that. And so this gave us a lot of thought about that. And I think I know that I'm taken away from your talk was that the flexibility and that communication would be really important. Even if we don't agree, how can we agree?
Right.
Yeah.
Can we find, what's our common ground that we can find to build on? Right. What can we agree on that needs to be maintained in light of this new reality? And that's what it really has been, I think, for all of us.
And that comes through from you, that you have this calming that I would see as being able to two people be able to work through that if they had you to call, or that somebody special that you would direct them to for guidance.
Right. Co-parenting therapy is often helpful for couples who are having real difficulty. Even when we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, we often recommend co-parenting therapy. So for couples that are having real difficulty, a few sessions with a mediator or a therapist, it doesn't have, we don't need to call the person a mediator. They can just be a plain old therapist, right? And what I tell my couples is that it can be enormously beneficial to plan to have maybe 6 sessions with this therapist, or even as many as a dozen sessions. And that can be enormously helpful, and it can help people get kind of back to square one, if you will, if they're having difficulty. And so that's a really good recommendation. And one of the reasons why I recommend a few sessions is that couples can sometimes embrace a few sessions rather than me saying, well, you have to go into therapy. You need to be in therapy for the next, 20 years to get over if there's a difficulty, if there's a problem, to get over that particular issue or problem and have that addressed, and then you can move forward.
I love that you have the resources that we don't even know we need. And there you are, just giving that direction, that guidance. That's comforting alone, especially when you're really agitated or concerned about your child and you don't have that influence because they're not living with you. And this was very, very helpful. So Debbie, thank you. So if anybody's interested in mediation with the Alpha Center to get more information, please call the Alpha Center. And that phone number is 1-800-310-9085. Debbie, thanks so much for being our guest, being our team,
Georganne.
one of our team mediators, and hope to see you again soon.
Take care.